Hey guys, Julian here. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the RØDECaster Pro II's onboard audio processing to make you sound incredible every time you hit record. The RØDECaster Pro II offers a full suite of studio quality processors that are all powered by APHEX, one of the most revered names in pro audio. So I'm going to walk you through everything from using the simple VoxLab editor for getting perfectly balanced audio in just a few seconds to crafting your own sound using more advanced tools. Here I've got my pod mic plugged into input 1 of the RØDECaster Pro II, which is assigned to fader 1. In this video, I'll be adding some processing to my own voice, so you'll be able to hear that, but you can use this processing on anything you have running into your RØDECaster Pro II, from guitars to keyboards, even your USB and Bluetooth channels. Now, before we jump into the processing, the first step towards achieving perfect processing is ensuring you have a clean slate to work with. The RØDECaster Pro II's incredible Revolution preamps will of course give you a great head start, but there are a few other things to do before you start adding processing to your signal. First up, you want to make sure that your room is as quiet as it can be by doing things like closing doors and closing windows. You also want to make sure that your gain is set correctly and that you're speaking as you would while recording as you add the processing to your voice. For more info on mic technique and getting set up to record, hit the link in the description below. With that said, let's jump into the actual processing. To access the processing for one of your channels, simply tap the Channel Setup button. Now, there are a few ways to tweak and control the processing on the RØDECaster Pro II. In a moment, I will show you how you can fine-tune each parameter to taste using the advanced editor. But first, I want to introduce you to VoxLab. VoxLab is an intuitive audio shaping tool for achieving perfect processing in just a few seconds. You can think of it as easy mode for the processing on the RØDECaster Pro II, and it's perfect if you aren't familiar with audio processing tools or if you just want to get good sound very quickly. Now, using these three simple controls, depth, sparkle, and punch, you can tweak multiple parameters on a combination of processors to achieve the sound that you want. Simply tap which one of these you want to edit and use the rotary encoder to add more or less processing. So I'll just turn on VoxLab here. You probably notice that my voice has changed somewhat. So I'm going to choose my sparkle and turn that down because I sound a bit too sparkly. And I'll decrease the depth on my voice and increase the punch a little bit. Depth will subtly enhance the low end of your signal, giving it more richness and tighter bass articulation. Now, this is really good for achieving that signature broadcast voice tone heard on countless professional podcasts and of course on the radio. Now, sparkle will add brightness and detail to your signal, which is perfect for giving your voice more air and clarity. Punch will add some subtle compression to your signal, making your voice sound more intelligible and consistent. It will also adjust the noise gate to help reduce background noise as well. Now, these three controls have been designed to interact seamlessly with one another, giving you perfectly balanced processing with a simple twist of a knob. These effects are subtle and will sound great in any position. Where you choose to position them will depend on your voice and your personal preference. So I'm going to add some of that radio broadcast tone there and add a little bit of punch to my voice. So let's say that we are happy with the sound that we've achieved here and we want to hear a before and after. Simply hit the processing button here and you will get a sense of whether you're making improvements or if you need to reconsider your settings. This is me before, la la la, and this is me afterwards, la la la. You can hear definitely a lot darker and not as punchy. Now, if you decide you want more control over the processing, or if you just prefer tweaking everything yourself, there is of course the advanced processing editor. To access this, simply tap Advanced. As you can see, you have access over each processor individually from the advanced editor screen. Here we have the high pass filter, the De-esser, the noise gate, compressor, equalizer, and the APHEX Aural exciter and big bottom, and then of course the panning. The signal chain here is organized with the subtractive processors like the high pass filter and the De-esser first, and then of course the additive processors like the Aural exciter and big bottom second. You can kind of think of this like cooking a meal. We are cutting off the things that we don't want, like fat from the meat or stems from the vegetables first, and then later on we are adding in things like spices and sauces. So let's go through these one by one, starting from the top. The high-pass filter is our first step. It's called that because it's a filter that allows the high frequencies to pass while filtering out the low frequencies. With this tool, we can cut low-end frequencies that can be a result of things like air conditioners or traffic rumble. It can also be used to make voices sound less muddy. The frequency control here will determine at what frequency the filter starts from, and then of course the slope control determines how dramatic this roll-off curve is. Now the trick here is starting low, then increasing the frequency control until you hear any rumble or muddiness start to disappear. So starting low, pulling it up, you can probably start to hear that around here, this is where my voice starts to get a little bit thin. Low voices tend to be starting at around 100 Hertz. So I'm going to back that off a little bit until I hear that low and frequency come in. About 90, you can hear that really popping through. And with the slope, let's just go for 12 dB per octave, that's fine. Next, we have the De-esser. This is handy for controlling sibilants in your voice, meaning those harsh S or T sounds that can cut through in a recording. It's worth mentioning that sibilance is not always an issue in everyone's voice, so you may find you don't actually need to use it. Now, the de-esser works similarly to a compressor, only instead of attenuating the whole signal, it targets only a very set range of frequencies. Sibilance is most common in the human voice, around 5 to 8 kHz, but your voice may be different. So in order to find where sibilance occurs in your voice, set your threshold and ratio to an aggressive setting and repeat the sentence like, "Sally sells seashells by the seashore." But while repeating that, make sure that your hand is on the frequency control and watch your gain reduction meter indicated on the graph here while you scan the frequency range. So what that looks like is I am turning down the threshold here to about -30, which is very aggressive. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Sally sells seashells. So I found that the sibilance comes through at about 2.2 kHz on my voice in particular. So I'm going to back off that threshold slightly so it's not as aggressive, and so it only triggers right when the sibilance is coming through my voice. You can see that there. Let's put a bit of gain back into the signal. And that looks like that's in a pretty healthy spot with my sibilance for my voice. So talking about some of these controls here, threshold controls how sensitive the de-esser is. Attack controls how quickly the de-esser acts upon the signal. And then of course, release controls the speed that it lets go of the signal after reducing it. Ratio controls how much the signal is reduced by. And then of course, the gain control is used to reintroduce some volume to your signal if you find that the de-esser is reducing your overall level too much. Next up, we have the noise gate. Now, the noise gate is a super helpful tool for removing any background noise in your recording, such as computer fans or air conditioners or even traffic noise. If you are recording in a space that isn't sound treated and might be a little bit noisy, this tool is especially useful, but it can be tricky to set it correctly. A noise gate can be thought of like an actual gate that will open, letting sound through if it's above a certain level, but then closing when that sound drops below a certain level, shutting out quiet sounds like background noise. With the controls here, we can also dictate how quickly the gate opens, how fast it closes, and even how much it closes if we don't want it to close completely. Now, the trick to setting a noise gate correctly is finding the point where you are just removing the background noise, but it isn't affecting your voice. To illustrate this, I'm going to turn on the air conditioning here. With that turned on, we want to identify where the noise floor of the recording space is at. Let's turn our range all the way up to 100 dB so the gate is either completely opened or closed, and we'll also turn the threshold all the way down. Now I'm going to stop talking and turn up the gain so you can hear what I'm talking about, and then I am also going to be turning up the threshold until we begin to hear the noise disappear. Okay, once we've found this point, you can see that whenever I talk, the noise gate opens, and whenever I stop talking, the noise gate closes. Now, this still sounds a little bit unnatural, so let's start to relax some of the other settings here. The range can be reduced if we don't want the gate to close completely. We can adjust how quickly it opens or closes with the attack, the hold, the release, and the hysteresis controls. So let's relax the attack. The hold, we can leave that where it is. Release, we'll go to about 200. Hysteresis, let's get that relaxed down to about 0.15. And the range, go to about 50 dB. So it's a little bit more relaxed when it opens and closes. And that background noise becomes a little bit less unnatural when it cuts out. Okay, next up is the compressor. Now, the compressor is a useful tool for making your voice sound more consistent and balanced. This is achieved by bringing down or compressing the loudest peaks in your signal while boosting the quiet parts so that your voice sounds even and natural. So the simplest way to get a good result is to find the threshold point, being the level of the loudest parts of your voice, and then making minor tweaks from there. In order to make the threshold super obvious, we are going to set the ratio fairly high. Now we'll want to adjust the threshold while talking into the microphone, and we'll start to see the gain reduction in the graph while we talk. So while I'm talking, I'm looking up here at the gain reduction meter here, and you can see whenever I start to talk the loudest parts of my voice, it's going to pop down and increase that compression on my voice. Now, if you are looking for a more natural sound, you might want to back off the threshold slightly, but if you really like that squashed broadcast tone, we can actually leave this dialed in where it is. I don't like it, so I'm going to turn that back up and just have a little bit of a tickle on our gain reduction there, maybe just even less than 1 dB on the loudest parts of my voice. Once we've found our ideal threshold, we can adjust how much signal is being reduced with the ratio and how quickly the compressor acts with the attack and the release controls. So I want a pretty relaxed sound, so I'm going to reduce that ratio down to 2:1. The attack is fine where it is, and the release is slow enough that I'm happy as well. The last step here is to restore some of that overall volume that we've lost by compressing the signal with the gain control. So it looks like I'm just shaving off the peaks of my signal. So all I want to do is add a tiny little bit of gain back into the signal, maybe even just 1 or 1.5 dB of gain there. Remember, each processor has a bypass button so you can easily compare how it's affecting your voice or input source. So this is what it sounds like with the compressor turned on, and this is what it sounds like with it turned off. Hardly adding anything to the signal there. Having this point of reference to go back to is always super handy when applying processing, as it is easy to forget how your signal sounded beforehand. The RØDECaster Pro II also has a 3-band parametric equalizer, giving you full control over the tonality of your voice or your input source. This includes controls for high, mid, and low-end frequencies. Now, this equalizer has what is known as a bell EQ, which increases or decreases the gain at a certain frequency, then it rolls off on either side. This lets you boost or cut treble, mid, or bass frequencies in a balanced way without it being too dramatic, unless of course you really want to push it. We have also included controls that allow you to select at what frequency the bell peaks so that you can be more precise with how you want it to affect your signal. So I'm actually interested in a bit of a smile curve with my EQ, so I'm going to leave this set to about 1.2 with the high gain. The mid gain, I'm going to cut about 1.2 in that muddy area, 450 to 500 hertz. And then I'll leave that exactly where it is with the low bell, about 100 hertz, boosting 1.9 dB to help bring some body into my audio there. So I'm a big fan of the smile EQ curve, so I'm going to leave it exactly where it is here. You can see the mids are being scooped, and I have a bit of additions in the highs and the lows, which really help to create a bit of a dramatic sound to my voice. Here's a pro tip. If you want to really get in there and notch out a certain frequency, there is a secret control that allows you to do this. Simply press and hold on any one of the gain knobs, and it will shift over to a Q control. This can be adjusted to affect the breadth of frequencies that are affected. So you can see currently it's quite wide, but I can actually adjust that and make it very narrow if I really want to. And finally, in our sonic soup, we have our audio equivalent of salt and pepper. That's the APHEX Aural Exciter and the Big Bottom. Now, these two powerful processors are legendary amongst studio professionals for adding a magic touch to just about any sound source. The Aural Exciter is useful for adding presence, clarity, and detail to your signal, while the Big Bottom adds depth, punch, and richness. These two work wonderfully together, especially when you find just the right balance between the two. To get a really good result with the big bottom, it's best to find the root note or body of your voice and choose how much drive you want to add. Many deep voices start at about 80 to 180 Hertz, but some voices have a higher register. In that case, we'd be looking at around 150 to 250 Hertz. So I think my voice is a little bit deeper, so I'm going to have the tune at about 90. We identified before it was about 93, and I'm going to have a little bit of drive, not too much because I don't want to go too nuts. For the Aural Exciter, it's all about adding to taste. A good place to start is to turn up the harmonics and adjust the tune until you hear a result that you like. You can then relax the harmonics to achieve something more natural. So I'm going to hit those harmonics and really pump them. You can hear that clarity coming through my voice. Clarity, ha, 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 air, air, air. That's a bit too much. So I found that I don't really like anything below about 2000 Hertz on my voice in particular. So I'm going to turn that back to 2000 and relax some of those harmonics because I want something a little bit more conservative. You can see the big bottom and the Aural Exciter are working on my voice and adding a little bit of drive and harmonics to it. Now I'm pretty happy with that sound, so I'm going to move on. Now we have a fully processed sound for my voice that I am happy with. Sometimes when adjusting your processing, it's easy to go down a rabbit hole where you're adjusting settings to the point where you don't know if it's sounding better or worse than when you started. Now this is where the on-off switch is your best friend. As mentioned before, every single processor has this little button, but you've also got a master processing on and off button as well. So that can be found here underneath your processing on the main screen. Just use this to give yourself a before and after snapshot of your work. And you might decide after doing this that you need to go back and adjust the EQ slightly or fix up how the noise gate is affecting your voice. So this is what my voice sounds like with everything on. And this is what it sounds like with everything off. You can hear it's definitely darker. You can hear the noise coming through. So the noise gate is doing its job, definitely. And that's what it sounds like with it turned back on. Another cool thing to think about is that you don't necessarily need to pick between using VoxLab or the Advanced Processing Editor. You may decide after finding a great sound using just the VoxLab that you still want to make a few smaller tweaks to individual processors. Now in this case, you can turn on advanced processing and all the settings will be preserved, allowing you to go into each processor and make further adjustments. Now, once you have all of your processing just right, you can save all the settings as a preset, which can be loaded at any time. Simply tap Presets, then tap the plus button, and then you can name your preset, and then you can tap Done to save that preset. As you can see here, we have a selection of generic presets for different voice types that we've preloaded onto the RØDECaster Pro II. These can be used as a really nice starting point for you to shape further if you need to. Finally, let's take a look at the Compellor Master Compressor, which is based off of the iconic APHEX unit of the same name. This can be accessed by going to Settings, Outputs, and Processing. Now this processor works somewhat differently to the other processors as it will affect the master output of the RØDECaster Pro II rather than a single track. This should be used subtly as a way to glue all of your tracks together and make the entire mix sound more balanced. As you can see, it has all of the controls of the channel compressor, except it has a set compression ratio. Now, the best way to achieve good results here is to have all of the individual elements of your audio playing at once while you watch the gain reduction meter here. To find out more about how to set up and use the RØDECaster Pro II, be sure to check out the other videos via the link in the description below. And that is how you use the RØDECaster Pro II's processing. Happy recording, everyone.